Welcome back, Lauren.
Hey, Happy New Year.
It's Happy New Year. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah, I'm super happy to be back.
Yeah, so your last talk was a fascinating story of your pot smuggling career,
Yes.
which you touched a little bit on your travels, but you're an extensive traveler. You've been all over the world, right?
Yes.
You,
I
you,
have,
you, sho- you showed me your passport. It was there was no more room for any more stamps.
yeah, no room. I got it in 2017. And since then, I have just been on the go completely. I think in 2017, I did like 12 countries. And then the next year, I did around 14 or 15 countries.
Wow, that's a lot of travel.
Yeah, it became an obsession, honestly. I think sometimes it's just like an escape from from like all the pot dealing world that I was in. But it's just that was my ultimate dream come true. Like I still reflect on it since COVID, everything slowed down a lot with my traveling and for everybody, obviously. But just the reflecting process that I've been through in the past 2.5 years, every single day, I still think like, wow, I can't believe I did that. Like I still think of little things because it was an everyday thing that I was traveling. I didn't ever have time to reflect. It was just on to the next, on to the next. And then COVID hit, and then I started remembering everything, and I was just like, what the fuck did I just do? That was crazy. And I'm so grateful, and it humbled me a lot. So
Rather than asking you what continents you've been to, what continents have you not been to?
just Antarctica.
Antarctica is the only one you've not been to.
Yeah.
And you're young still. You're 20.
I just turned 30
You just turned 30.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're 30, but you've
since
been
we last
everywhere.
seen each other.
What's-
Not everywhere per se, but definitely like widespread.
what kind of countries do you like to travel to? Like
I love
Paris
third-
and London and
No,
Tokyo,
no.
or
No.
the more
Yeah, I love
exotic?
third world rugged. Africa is my favorite country, or sorry, continent. South Africa is one of my favorite countries. I would say this is the number one question that I get asked. What's your favorite country? And it's hard to choose. It always changes, but Turkey was fascinating to me. It felt like I was on another planet. I just had such an adventurous time there. That was around I don't know, in the 20s of countries that I visited. So right now I'm at 31. There are almost 200 countries in the world. I think there's 192 or 191. So I have a lot to go, but I have, touched on a lot. I think
And when you travel, what's your style of traveling? You like to
it's been all over the place. So when I first started, the first country I went to was Australia, and I did 5 months there. So that was the longest trip I've ever taken
5
since
months?
then. Yeah.
So you're a serious traveler.
Back then, yeah.
Not 5
Not so much anymore.
days, but 5 months.
Yeah. And I had such a fun time there. I went to Byron Bay, which is this like hippie little, not little, but beautiful town off on the beach. And there's a lot of people doing like mushrooms and painting, drum circles, yoga. There's lots of hostels to stay in. And I was very broke back then. So I was an au pair for a little bit, a foreign nanny, and I would make money doing that. However, it was only $5 an hour. So I think I made like $500 with that gig, and I ended up flying my ex-boyfriend out for his birthday, and I spent all my money and I was broke again. So I would just set myself up for failure a lot financially when I first started traveling. But then with the transporting gig, I would literally spend almost all of my money. Like for the 4 years that I did it, I would put all my money into traveling. I went to Spain 12 times in 4 years. I went to countries multiple times, like Egypt twice, Morocco twice, Turkey twice, a couple others.
And you spend a lot of time when you're at these locations.
Not really. It would just depend because I kind of was also fixated on my job and making money at the time. So I felt like the longer I was gone, then I was losing out on money, or a boss would be hitting me up on an app. Like we would never talk through text or anything. So they would hit me up and they'd be like, when are you coming back? I have an opportunity for you. So it was like a battle of being free when I would leave, and I was financially set free eventually. But in the beginning, like when I went to Australia and the first 2 years of my travels, I didn't have a car in America. Again, I would set myself up for failure financially. I would just blow my money the second I made $500 or $1,000. And I think after about a year, I just started learning tools on your mindset and figuring out things about my childhood. And it gave me a lot of clarity within my worth. And I just had a switch in my mindset, and I was like, I am worth so much better than this. I do not need to be hitchhiking all around. Like hundreds of millions of people have a car out there. I can have one too, you know? I just simply switched my mindset and started believing in myself. And I want to say within a week, I started just having so many opportunities come through financially, friendships, better connections with people, starting to love myself, traveling more. So once I switched my mindset, then I was kind of like pulling myself out of like the roughs, which was couch surfing, sleeping on random people's couches and just drifting around and sleeping in tents and stuff like that. So the first year and a half of my travels was like very rugged, and I hitchhiked around 100 to 200 times, and I would meet, I mean, it was on the daily. So sometimes I would hitchhike 3 times in one day just to go down the street to the grocery store. But I made a lot of connections through that, but obviously it's super dangerous. And a lot of the things that I talk about and what I'm gonna say, I do not advise a lot of people to do. It's not for everybody. It's just things that I felt was right in the moment. And sometimes I look back on them and I think they're very stupid and just being careless. But I would switch into different modes and sometimes just be in my carefree element. So finding the balance of like careless and carefree has been a huge challenge for me in my 20s. And
It sounds like you like adventure.
I love it, yeah.
So tell me about your experience in Turkey.
So I got there
What was your
and
favorite?
I was in Spain. This was actually right after I got out of jail. So in the first interview, I explained that I went to jail for 4 days after getting busted with having pounds in the back of my trunk. And luckily, the people I was working for, the bond was $132,000, and they bailed me out. So I got it out fast. Money talks when you're in jail, and in a lot of situations in life. So I was bailed out, and they asked for my passport when I left. It was the bailsman or the bondsman. He asked if he could have my passport, and I just lied, and I was like, oh, I don't have it on me. And he's like, okay, that's fine. Well, I actually had a ticket out to Barcelona for 3 days later, because I would have my trips planned a little bit in advance. And I don't want to confuse anybody. So I was on the road driving to Utah, and I had all this weed in my trunk, and I was going to get paid maybe $10,000 or $15,000 for it. So my plan was to fly to Barcelona after and spend some time there. But on the way to Utah, I got pulled over, spent 4 days in jail, and I got out not thinking that I would make this trip whatsoever. I just let it go. I was like, obviously I'm in jail, I'm not gonna make this trip. But I got out with 3 days to spare. I had a couple people in Utah that still owed me money. I had enough money to get my truck out of the tow yard, and it had all my belongings in there. So I went to Utah, picked up the cash that I was owed, came back to California just in time to catch my flight out to Barcelona. Like that day, it was just like go, 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 fresh out of jail. So me and my friends, we ended up taking a little bit of mushrooms. And because at this point I was just like, wow, I can't believe I'm out of jail right now. I'm just gonna live life the fullest. And I enjoyed taking some plant medicine here and there. And so I caught this flight to Barcelona, and I had maybe $4,000 to my name. And I had 8 weeks before I had to show up to court. So I decided that I was gonna spend 7 of the 8 weeks just traveling. But I only had a ticket to Spain. And then I saw that the economy crashed in Turkey, and the ticket was only $40 to get to Turkey from Barcelona. So I took a flight to Turkey, into Istanbul, and it was crazy. It was like the dollar, for every dollar, it was 1 to 12. So that's essentially like getting $12 for every dollar. Whereas normally it's 1 to 4. So I went there and I was completely, basically rich. Like I was able to stay in luxury hotels that we would spend $500 on in America for $20. It was really nice.
Wow.
So my first place that I went to was a place called Pamukkale, and it's the Cleopatra bathing pools. And that is so beautiful. If you guys ever go to Turkey, that's one of my favorite places I've ever been to. And then I went to a place called Cappadocia. Some people pronounce it a little different, but it's basically this town that it looks like a sunken in city, and it has these huge rocks, kind of like Joshua Tree, which I feel like a lot of people have been to. But there's these huge rocks, and they carved out caves in them, and they built a whole underground city because there was a war back in the 70s. So people were hiding underground. So now in modern day, you'll go to Cappadocia and it already feels like very, again, out of this world. And you'll see like boards covered up in the streets. And that's because under there's holes. And the holes go down like 10 feet or however far down, because it's a whole city underground. And you can take tours. But when I got there, I went to this carpet shop, and it's the biggest carpet shop in Turkey. I met the gentleman who owned it, and he said there's 70,000 carpets here. And there was 70 rooms of carpets. Some of them lead you outside to the big rocks and all these colors, and they're so beautiful. So he was giving me a lesson on the carpets, and he showed me the symbols and how to read, which I had no idea that you can read carpets. So I pulled out a carpet and he said, try to read this since I just taught you the symbols. And I was like, oh, it's about a woman who's a widow and she climbed up a mountain, something with a goat. Like you can read it like a story. So we were pulling out different carpets, and he was like, yeah, this gentleman worked on this carpet for 6 months. He knew just by the textiles and the carpets, all the hand woven ones. So after talking with him for like a 45 minutes or so, and he has a servant bring him like an ashtray, or some tea for us, stuff like that. And the servant's just always standing there ready to serve us. And he told me, he was like, I really like you. I would love if you started a carpet shop in LA or help us with our online, because he was very old. He was in his 90s. He said, I'll be passing on soon. But he was like, I want to hook you up with my grandson. So he tried to like set us up in this random carpet room. And his grandson was only 18 and I was 26 at the time. And I obviously knew like nothing was gonna come about it, but I thought it was just fun in the moment. So I was talking to him and I asked the grandson, I said, what's the craziest thing that's happened in this town? And he told me about a week ago, there was a man that stood on one of those boards that I was telling you guys about. And the board cracked and he fell in. And I guess there was water at the bottom and the man drowned. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so sad. And the boy was telling me how it's affected the whole town, because besides the tourists, there's a lot of people, but the locals, there's, it's a small knit community. So I asked him, he told me that it was the owner of a hotel. And I said, what's the hotel? And he said, the Shoestring Hotel. And I looked at him and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the hotel I'm staying at. So we kind of just ended our conversation. I went back to my hotel and I was outside and I saw this lady and she asked me if I had a lighter. And I did at the time, so I gave it to her. And we kind of like sat together, because I don't really smoke cigarettes, but I did kind of just as a social thing back then. So we were smoking a cigarette together. And within a few minutes, she said that her dad just died and that it was really hard for her. And I realized that that was the daughter of the man who obviously just died. So she told me that she was supposed to get married a couple days ago, but her father passed away. And she was like, I just really want to have like a wild night, but it's against my religion. If my family sees me drinking, I'll be kind of like banned from the family or just looked down upon. So she had like all these new cars. Her dad owned 10 hotels. She told me that she's become a millionaire overnight and she has to run the hotels, and it was just a lot. Like her phone was going off constantly, and she's like, I just can't handle this. I want to get away. And she's like, I love Americans. I would love to take you on an adventure. So we got some wine and we went up to the part of town where you can overlook and see the sunken city. And we were drinking, and it was really fun getting to know each other. And I love getting to new places and getting to know the locals. And as we're drinking, I look up and I see a shooting star, and then I see another one, and we're both looking up, and the sky is just going off, and there was a meteor shower. And it was one of the most magical moments of my life. It was so incredible, and stuff like that just makes traveling for me so worth it. I got to meet locals. I was having a good time. I met the owner of the biggest carpet store in Turkey. Just like reputable, amazing people out there, and just hearing their stories. And this story is like a lot more lighter than some of the other ones I've been on, because being a lone girl is a huge challenge. And people try to rip you off all day long, no matter who you are, especially as an American. They hear your accent, you're in a third world country, they're just ready to rip you off. So that started to get to me, and you kind of have to manipulate people back in a way, which is crazy, but I'm sure you know, being out here on the streets.
Sure.
You do have to be manipulative sometimes. And you have to think fast. And I put myself out there, and what happened in Turkey, again, is super magical, but there's places I've been, like South Africa and Johannesburg. And one day I'm with the beautiful giraffes and elephants, and I could see tigers a little bit of ways, stuff like that. And then the next day, you could be like chased in the streets, like what happened to me. And in that particular situation, I was trying to get a taxi, and I called an Uber. And there's a huge war going on with the taxis and Uber drivers in Johannesburg and other parts in Africa. And they're just ruthless. Like they'll come up with baseball bats and bash the Uber drivers' windows and throw fire into their car. And I heard these stories time after time. I had so many people tell me not to go to Johannesburg when I was in Cape Town, which is a major city. I think it's the capital, actually, of South Africa. So people all day long when I travel tell me, don't go here, don't go there. And usually they're correct about the dangerous parts of it, but I choose to go anyways because I'm on my own adventure and I like the thrill of it. And I don't want to just go to a place that's super calm. I mean, sometimes, but like you said, do I like Paris and places like that? That's not my number one place to choose. I want a thrilling adventure, so.
And you'll go to poor places as well, right?
Yeah.
Even through Africa?
Yeah, parts of Johannesburg were very poor, so that's where I did work with Skateistan, and the kids, none of them had shoes. If they did, they were barely hanging on. And I came with toys and just like pencils and pens and crayons and stuff like that, and they were all over it, like so happy. Whereas here, kids wouldn't, I mean, I don't think they would really be that grateful. These kids were lit up. You can give them anything and they will light up. And that's my favorite thing to do. I'm realizing that it's obviously not just in third world countries, that's where it's the most extreme, but in our own country, there's extremes too. What really hits my heart the hardest is the foster care system. And I do maybe I can do like a quick in-depth of my childhood, because it's a pretty essential part of obviously who I am, but my adulthood. And once I found out the truth of my childhood, it put so much together as far as why I've traveled so much. Like, it just makes sense. So I was told that from age birth until 23 years old, I was told that my grandparents adopted me and they took me in since day one. And everything was good since then, and that's it. But I found out the truth when I came to visit my mom when I was 23. I moved to California when I was 21, and a few years later I met up with my mom. She lives out here in San Francisco, and I wanted to know more about her since I didn't get to see her throughout my childhood. Once I saw her, some terrible things happened, and it's an ongoing thing that she tries to harm my family and me. She's just aggressive person because she got into a bicycle accident when she was 13. A motorcycle hit her on her bike and she fell off and she had to have brain surgery. So she's very off emotionally, mentally, and she wasn't able to raise me. So I knew that part, but I did not know that she tried to raise me for 8 months. Because like I said, I thought that my grandparents had me since day one. So my mom tried to raise me until 8 months, and I guess she would do a lot of questionable things, like leave me in the bathtub, and if I was crying, she would like shake me or just throw me down, stuff like that. And one day she decided that she couldn't handle it anymore, and she was living with my grandparents, her parents. So she put me into an adoption facility, and she didn't tell anybody. And she took off with my dad, and she came to the West Coast. And my grandparents were really, really upset because I was in their home for 8 months, so they grew an attachment to me. So they did everything they could. They asked her, can you please let us know this adoption agency that she's at? And my mom just cut them off. Well, my grandparents ended up finding me 2 weeks later, and by then I already had a family that wanted to adopt me, and they went through the process and everything. So my grandparents asked if they could have me back, and they said if they give them $20,000, the family that wanted to adopt me. So my grandparents took out a loan, they got me back, and I guess my mom found out, and she had called the police and said that my grandpa was molesting me, which was not true. So my grandpa was thrown in jail. This was back in the 90s, so they just acted on it. He was thrown in jail, and I was taken out to foster care. And then I guess it was 6 weeks that my grandma was by herself in the home. My grandpa was in jail, I was in foster care, until they could prove it wrong. And then my grandpa was released, and I was brought back into their family, into their arms. And they raised me ever since, and they've been super worried about me. And it kind of all just made sense to me after I found that out, because I went from my mom's arms to a random family for 2 weeks, then back to my grandparents, then into another random family, and then back to my grandparents in under a year, so a matter of 11 months or so. So that's 5 different families. And the first 2 years of your life, you need to be nurtured the most. Most people are with the same mother. If not, maybe they get adopted, so that's 2. But I was with 5. So I think it made me super adaptable. And that's why I'm able to talk to so many people. I'm able to go off on the streets and make friends everywhere I go. I'm able to just travel to new countries. It's really not for everybody, but it's instilled in me. And it's actually hard for me to ground because of that, which is okay. I just realize it's my path, and everybody has a crazy story, and I like sharing mine because others can relate. I also have, not to like lay everything on, but I have health problems. I'm a type 1 diabetic. So it's been a real struggle on my travels. I've been in the hospital a couple times, one time in Morocco. And being in a third world country's hospital is really scary. They don't have a lot of resources. The communication's completely off. I don't know what they're, putting in my body. stuff like that. So diabetes is no joke, and I've been imbalanced with it many times, but I don't let it control me anymore. So that's great. But I just wanted to say that because, again, it's relatable. But yeah, even though like I don't want to just make traveling sound like it's all beautiful and pretty, because the pictures that are shown online, it's hard, it's rough. Like just because you have money sometimes doesn't mean that it's all obstacle free. But it became an addiction of mine, and I'm so happy that I was able to go to all the countries that I went to.
What have you learned? Because I've seen people who have never traveled anywhere outside of their, like some of the people in Appalachia have never left their little city or county. And I've met people who have been all over the world. And clearly the people who have traveled have learned things about living and life and people in general that only travel can teach you. What kind of stuff have you learned?
I learned so much wisdom from it. I mean, obviously there's many things that I learned, but I'll give you top maybe 3 things. So the wisdom aspect, I believe that I was born street smart, but living in Indiana, I think 95% of the kids, when we graduated, they all said, I'm going to college, I'm going to college. And I was one that said, I don't want to go to college, I want to travel. And people would call me dumb or tell me you have to go. I didn't really hear that from a mom and dad since it was just my grandma. She wasn't really like crazy on me like that. But it was just nice to know that I did not have to go to college to be smart. I am street smart, and I learned so much more wisdom that I ever think I could have just by studying from a book. I got to study with my eyes, with all my senses, with different tastes and the food and different languages I picked up on. I learned a little bit of Sanskrit, so they're like mantras in India. And for me, when I go off into crazy elements, it makes me feel protected. It's kind of like saying affirmation sentences, like saying, I am protected, I am protected. But for me, the Sanskrit is such a high vibrational language. I'll say one of them for you. It's Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Aveda Gadada Shri Vasadi Goda Bhaktavinda. And that's just my personal, it's like an invocation to all the gods and goddesses in India, or most of them. And it just makes me feel so protected. So that's one fun thing that I learned. Personally, I learned, and every time I say this, a lot of older generational people say that the young never learn this. So let's change that. And it is to help people. Super simple advice, but if you see someone struggling, if they need the door open, if they need help packing their groceries in their car, the elderly, the young, children, whatever, that is just goes so far. And it's so silly that it took me to travel the world to know that, but it is what it is. And once I learned that, it made my life so much more fulfilling. And I love doing that everywhere I go. So again, it's really basic, but it changes people's days, and it helps with your good karma too.
It does. You have one more to share, right? So I'm interrupting you, but
No, you're good.
Don't lose your point. But after interviewing so many people, the people who have been through the hardest struggles and have maybe learned the most valuable lessons in life, have all they've all come back to me with the same lesson, which is it's important to be of service to others.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
And that's another thing when traveling in India, that's like one of their religion. They have a couple different religions, but they all say act of service to others is why, like a huge essential part of why we're living here. Mm-hmm. It's not all about us. And I see that all the time. A lot of the times the lessons I learn are from seeing the opposite. Either myself act or other people act in the opposite manner. So people acting like they're the only person around. And I just experienced that at the airport the other day. a lady was getting off the bus and I was getting on, and I had to like stand out of the way for her to get off. She doesn't even look at me, but if it were me, I would be like, oh, thank you, just a little thing. And then she's getting off her huge luggage and she like knocks me with her luggage, and she doesn't even act like I was there or she did it. She didn't look at me, she didn't say anything. I was like, excuse you. And she didn't say anything after that. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's really people out here that believe they're the only ones. It's just crazy to me. So by seeing people that act like that, it makes me want to be the opposite. And I could tell like by the way she dressed and everything, it was like a wealth thing. Like she just, money got to her head or something, but it's just really silly. So and the third one I mentioned, I believe in the first interview, but it's just to be humble, because, you know, I don't ever want to come off as I'm bragging. I am so grateful of all the things I've been through. I am very privileged. That was a comment that I got in the first video, white privileged. I'm actually half Mexican, and then I just found out through my brother. He took a 23andMe test, but we are Cherokee Indian. So we can drop the white privilege part, and I will admit I am very privileged, but so are you guys, because you're either on a computer, a tablet, a cell phone watching this, and that is a privilege in itself. There's a lot of people out there that don't have that. They don't even barely have water every day. We are so privileged.
What is the poorest part of the world you've seen?
Parts of India.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have I went to Vrindavan, India. It's so you fly into New Delhi, and then it's a 3-hour drive down south. And on the way, there was parts that we stopped in, like little villages, and there's just dead, rotting dogs everywhere. The trash was overfilled. You couldn't even tell if people were sleeping or if they were dead, honestly. It was just their way of life. But I couldn't believe how many dead, rotting animals there were everywhere. And it wasn't just a fresh dead dog. Like you could see the bones coming out, and it had been, you know, they sit there and just no trash gets picked up, including people and animals. It's pretty hardcore. Mm-hmm. So that was crazy to me.
What's been your experience where you've seen the kindest people?
Ooh. The most hospitable people to me have been in Turkey. I would be walking the streets by myself, and there would be people, men, women, all ages. They would come outside or be sitting on their deck, and they would offer me tea. And I would take up a lot of the offers if I felt safe. I would just sit on their deck, and they thought I was from Turkey, like just a citizen walking. And then they heard I had an accent, and most of them would speak English. Something really cool too, there's other places that are very kind in the world, like all over, but that was just my first thought. With not knowing any other language primarily, besides English, I got by a lot off body language, which was really cool. When I was in the pyramids in Giza in Egypt, I had my camera with me, and there was a guardsman at the bottom of, so the biggest pyramid, it's King Khufu, the pharaoh. His tomb is up there. Well, there's like conspiracy theories that it's not up there anymore, but whatever. So I wanted to go up inside the pyramid, which I didn't know you could even go inside. Sorry if I spoiled that for anybody. But there's a guardsman at the bottom, and you're not allowed to bring any cameras in. So he asked if he could hold my camera, but I didn't really trust him. My camera was really expensive. So I decided to talk to him for a little bit. This is what I would do a lot of times. Like, you have to sacrifice your time for your protection sometimes. So by me talking to this man, spending 10, 15 minutes, seeing if I trust him with my camera or if he's just gonna run off, that's gonna save me, you know, getting a new camera or something like that. So I ended up talking with him. He was really cool. He said that he's been on the grounds every day since he was a child. And it was really nice to speak to such a grounded local there. I mean, living in the pyramids and being there every single day, that was his devotion. And I let him, or he watched my camera, and I went up and I was walking up the stairs and it was getting really, really hot. It was already like 100 degrees. This was in May. And temperatures reach in the summertime like 120 every day. So I was going up the stairs and I see all these people walking down and they're just like sweating like super intensely. And I thought it was crazy how many people were walking down. And then I get up to the top, and when I reach the top inside the area of the pyramid, there's only one person there, and it's a guardsman. And I was so confused. I was like, what? Like all these people just walked down the stairs. There was like 100 people that walked down. There's a lot of stairs too. And the guardsman didn't speak English. He spoke Arabic. So we were talking with body language, and I've never got so far off body language. It was so cool. He was telling me about just how it was Khufu's tomb here, and he just went like this, close your eyes. He walked me over to the tomb. He had me put my hands over the tomb. And in that moment, I'm gonna lose some people here, but I saw a vision, and it went all the way back. Like this is only for 2 seconds, but with my hands over, the vision went all the way back of my whole entire life. And then it like flashed forward, and it just showed me like immense happiness and travel, but it was only 2 seconds, and it startled me. So I like went back, and I feel like I just had like a intense vision in the pyramids, which was incredible. Like, and I wasn't on anything. I was completely sober, but it felt like some kind of like psychedelic vision. And I knew in that moment I was done. I only needed to be up there for 1 minute. And I thanked the guardsman. I walked back down, and all these people were rushing up. And I was like, whoa, like, that's so crazy. How did I just end up there by myself with the guardsman? So I get to the bottom to get my camera. The man that watched my camera asked me what happened or how my experience was. And I told him, and the look on his face, he's like, oh my gosh. He's like, it is 12 p.m. on a spring day. He's like, all these tourists here. He's like, you're telling me that you were the only one up there? He's like, that only happens to me at 5 a.m., like very early hours in the morning before all the tourists. He's like, that never happens. Like, you are so lucky. You are so guided to have that moment. And it really did. It feels like I went up there and like all the people left just for me to have that vision for whatever reason. So like between that and like the meteor shower, stuff like that just makes traveling so magical and unexpected. And I get that some of these stories are unbelievable, because if I didn't travel and get out there, I would think people are crazy for certain things. But I learned so much with my own eyes, seeing stuff like that, like seeing a meteor shower. I realize now how many stars actually go off, and that magic is in the air in Egypt. And I believe in ghosts now because I've had crazy ghost experiences. But if I didn't have them, then I wouldn't believe in this. So I get why people think it's just crazy sometimes, but there's so much out there. We live in such a vast, magical world. So yeah.
What have you learned about people from all your travels? You're seeing all kinds of people, all kinds of different people all over the world. I've met
thousands and thousands and thousands of people.
All these different cultures. What have you learned about humans in general?
Yeah, and I put myself out there, so you meet even more.
Right.
So I would say majority of people are very closed off, but I think someone like you and me, one of our gifts is people open up to us easily. Like since I was a kid, I would have people tell me these crazy things. Even my grandma was kind of alarmed sometimes when we were in the store. She'd be like, why did that person just tell you so much information? Or now that I own a jewelry business and it's right off the beach, I have so many people walk up to me and they'll tell me about their son that just died in an accident, or like their problems with this and that, and they'll start crying. And I just met them and it's only 10 minutes into our conversation. So to have that, I feel like is a gift, because people feel comfortable with you and they open up. So I know that I have that. And when I go around the world, people are constantly opening up to me. But I realized with other friends that express it, like people aren't like that all the time. People are very like guarded, and I have to open up to be opened up to, you know. If I put up a wall, which I can do that, and I have on my travels, I'm not just this open book all the time. Especially the way I dress. Like I respect each culture. Even in the weed industry when I was working, I'd always have hoodies on. I looked like you wouldn't even recognize me. I looked like a different person. I had my hair back all the time. It feels so good to be able to dress how I want to and just be myself completely. But people are all sorts. I wouldn't even say you can put a specific category because there's so many different types of people that were just amazing.
I'm sure you'd agree that it's important to be open-minded and adventurous and just open to doing something crazy when you travel, right?
Open to doing something crazy. I love, it might sound cheesy, but I just love lifting others up because I can see that, like, I know that I have a strong light in me and I just go around and smile at people and it changes people's days. It changes my day. So why not? It's like a win-win both sides. Mm-hmm. So I tell people they look beautiful, and like, even if they have like some crazy hair and they look like they haven't showered, if they have a beautiful smile or a beautiful aura, when I'm walking in the streets going through these countries, I'll be like, oh, you're beautiful. Bonita. Like, just, you know, it makes life so much more fun. So I'm walking around with my head up, looking at the structures and just having a great time. Like, how could I not?
It sounds like you've already had the kind of experiences I have, which is when you try to get to know one person, you get to know the whole country.
Yeah, truly, they open up to you.
Yeah.
And it's hard at first because you go through a moment like, what am I doing? Why am I here? Like, certain countries, I'm just like, I'm really out here. I'm all by myself. Like, what the heck am I doing? I never feel lost though. I've been called that by people, but I never had a sense of like feeling lost. Sometimes I'm just like, how did I end up here? But I know there's a reason. And then once I get a little bit established, and maybe I'll go around the same block 2-3 times or go to the same coffee shop and get to know one person there, and that person introduces me to someone else, or, you know.
And how is traveling the world changed the way you live when you're at home?
So it put into perspective that so many people told me not to go certain places, and I never had a thought of listening to them tell me what to do. I don't let people tell me what to do unless I'm influenced by them, you know. But most of the time, if someone's trying to tell me what to do, I'm just like, no, like, I'm gonna go do what I want to do. And I realized that these people are speaking out of fear, but they're living in America. And for me, the worst things that have ever happened to me have been in America. Like getting robbed, I've gotten my car broken into. These are separate occasions. So car broken into in Portland, I got robbed in Chicago, and I got a gun put to my head in Munster, Indiana. And that's my hometown. Mm-hmm. So these are terrible things to happen. And it made me realize I'm never, ever going to be in fear of leaving the country because I'm living so freely out there. And when I come back, like, it doesn't matter where you are, anything can happen. So I guess it just taught me to live the fullest and not to be scared, because for me, the scariest place is here, not overseas or anything.
All right. Lauren, thank you for coming back and telling us about your travels.
Yeah, it's been so fun.
You live an interesting life.
Thank you.
I think you figured out at a very young age what a lot of us could apply to our lives, and we try to be open-minded and adventurous, but you're doing it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I'm going to document more. Thanks for inspiring me too.
Yeah, I've been talking to Lauren.
Yeah,
off camera about what she should be doing with her fascination with travel.
Yes. So he inspired me to start a YouTube channel. I never thought I would be comfortable enough to be on camera or anything. So just opening up about my story has helped me so much, just like release. I mean, I had a lot to say, especially the first time. And I never thought people think it's unbelievable. So I never even realized that that's what I've been living. So
Yeah.
it's helped
Like,
me so much.
Your whole life is an adventure, and
Yes.
you're so young yet. So
Thank you.
excellent. Thank you, Lauren.
Sweet.